Okay, so I just want to discuss very briefly about my general advice about completing the labs. And I know the lab might appear to be very long because you're given 2 weeks, but I would say it's a really good way to really kind of challenge you about how you can program different classes from scratch on your own. The actual markup test and also the programming test will be like a definitely much shorter version than Lab 1, right? For Lab 1, you're given 2 weeks, but for the actual test, you do have some stricter, shorter time constraints. So it's going to be made accordingly for you. Okay, let's talk about the Lab 1 specifically. So I'll start from scratch just in case for those of your classmates who cannot attend, so they can also share this tips. So first of all, you want to download the file. You may say right-click and say save the file. Or if I just click on that, let's see if that might work. Okay, good. Yeah, it's going to be a zip file. Let me store that somewhere. That's on the desktop. And then I'll go to my Eclipse. So it's now there on my desktop. And then I'll go to Eclipse. File, imports. So this import process will be expected to be done on your own during the test, for the programming test. So please make sure you're familiar with it. Okay, and existing project to workspace, and make sure it's under general, right? And then say next. And the option will be not the first one, but the second one, select archive file. And then browse to wherever it is on the desktop. But usually during the lab test mode, in the actual programming test, it will be on your home directory or downloads. That's something you can search for very easily. And then we'll say open. All right, I'm going to import the projects. All right, it's this project over here with a red cross. So that means the project you imported has some errors to begin with. That would be expected as set in the instruction. So I'm not going to go over the PDF. You can go to the instruction PDF, read through all the requirements for programming, and also to see what the problem descriptions are. In the actual programming test, all the instruction will be on the JUnit test file itself in terms of comments. So you don't really have to switch between the PDF and also the Java file for instructions. You don't really have to, except for the submission and also import instruction. They will be on the PDF. Apart from that, everything should be just on the Eclipse. You can read. Just make it a little bit easier for you during the test. All right, so if you expand the source folder, you can see console apps. I would say this package over here, you can create your own console tester there if you want to see some output to the console. It will be optional, but I will somehow discourage you to do this because you really want to get more used to JUnit test and model classes only, right? But it's up to you. It will be optional. It doesn't hurt if you still want to do it. All right, so under JUnit test, that's the only file that's given to you. And the model package is empty. That means whatever you're going to put under the model package, you're going to infer the classes and methods that are required from the JUnit test cases, right? That's kind of from the PDF I kind of refer you to read since day one. Let's take a look. Right? I would say, since we got errors all throughout, but it doesn't really hurt just to try how many test cases you are given, right? So why don't we just say, right-click on that, and then run as JUnit test, right? Even though we got compilation error, but somehow Eclipse is nice enough to allow you to still run all the test cases. It's just that they will all fail, but that's okay. Let's at least see how many test cases we have. We can proceed despite errors, and it's going to run and show us. All right, we got 13 test cases in total. Okay, 13 over here. It's not that many, but I think every one of them is going to somehow trigger some further developments for classes and methods and even attributes. But I want to show the general workflow. Let's say you got 13 of them, you got lots of compilation error. This might kind of create some mental stress on you because you really want to start with something that's like a green bar to start with. That would be my suggestion. So I would say do the following. You can say, okay, you can read the instruction on the comments, but now you can say, starting from the very first test, right? You can see the test tag over here. Starting from there and go all the way to, okay, go all the way to the very last test until the end. Okay, here, only up to here. Don't really include the last curly bracket. That one's actually for closing the class, right? And if you want to do a block comment, you can say, if you are using Mac, you can say command /. If you're using Windows, you can say control /, right? That's something I believe I mentioned in the tutorial, but you can give it a try. All right, so now there's no compilation error. I cheated, of course, but that's okay. You know, that can just make you feel slightly better temporarily. So what I would suggest is this. If you go back to the beginning over there, I want you to maybe work on one test at a time. This is something you can also expect to happen in the programming test. I arrange all the test cases in the order for which I think you should really develop in your classes gradually. So it would be definitely logical to start with the very first test until the end. One test at a time, I would suggest. Okay? So how about I just do, if the first test, I can do something for you. Not completely, but let's see. So the first test is go all the way until line number 95. Again, highlight the whole area and then command or control /. So now we do have some compilation error. That's expected, but at least it's way fewer. Every time you're seeing, let's say I'm working on this particular test, so what I need to do is I should really look at what the compilation error is about. Right? So here, let's look at each one of them, and then I will just briefly mention what you're supposed to do. Now, of course, you got to go ahead and do it. Line number 72. So it's complaining about the left-hand side over here. It's saying that this class over here, it cannot be resolved to be a type, meaning that it doesn't exist. So why don't we try to fix a few errors together? Okay? So that means you got to create a new class. You got to do it in the model package. So right-click on the model package. You're going to create a class accordingly. Right? Log. Let's just do that. However, once I say save, it doesn't really remove the error just yet. Anybody know why? The original error was complaining about log doesn't exist. I just created that. But why it is still complaining? I got to import it. Very nice. Okay. If you haven't noticed that, please remember. Otherwise, you might kind of struggle a bit during the test. Very good. You got to import it. So there are basically two possible ways to import it. I will show it to you. Either you can say import model package dot log, or there's a shortcut for that. You can say all the classes in the model package. Either way is okay, but you got to do it by yourself during the test. Okay? Just remember, once you have created classes in different package, always import. Okay? But I'll just say start, just make it easy. Any classes are introduced in the model package, they will be imported automatically. So now if you go back to that original line, you can see that one there is gone, the left-hand side. So now the class does exist. What about the right-hand side here? It is complaining that we don't really have a constructor which will take some arguments of this particular type. And you can see it's not really double type because it's encoded. So it should be a string. So let's fix this one together as well. One more. I'll fix two more for you, at least for compilation. So I can go back to the log. You can feel free to just copy this one as a reference. And I'll go back to the model class over here and fix it. And I just worry about compilation for now. For the actual passing the test case, it will be something you will have to do. I can paste it here. Okay, it's the constructor I need to develop. Always public, the same name as the class. And then, now rather than some specific value for arguments, I need to generalize it into parameter type. So it will be a string. Let's say, I'll just say S for now. You can change the name later. At least, this one here is going to make sure this one compiles. Right? We fix that error. And then, let's just do one more. How about this one here? This one here, you can see it's complaining about the right-hand side. And then it's complaining about the get version over here. And let's move the mouse over. The method get version is undefined for the type log, meaning that you don't have that method just yet. So now you got to define that method. Now, if you want to put that method in the log class, you got to decide, is it an accessor or mutator? Which one? Accessor? Because it returns some value that can be used into a variable assignment, right? We also discussed that in the lecture. So what you can do is go back to the log class, and then you got to return a string. All right, so you're going to say public string and here. And this will be a very typical error for accessor because if you simply leave its implementation here empty, it's not compilable because you should always have at least one return statement in the accessor. So that's exactly what's complaining. In order to make compilation work, you should return some default value, right? For reference type string here, it will be just null. You can say return null. And this will make that particular line compile, right? So basically, that's what you have to do. I would suggest for every test case you're working on, try to fix all the compilation error like this by defining all the necessary methods. And then you kind of go into reading the actual test case to understand what's the meaning for each individual method and fix the implementation and get a green bar. All right? So that'll be my general advice. And then you will do this one test by one. So every time, let's say you're done with test number 1, you're ready to work on test number 2, you can go ahead and uncomment that using the shortcut, right? Just one by one. So you got 13 to work on. I think that'll be a little bit better. Incremental developments. Always get a green bar before you move on to the next text. Okay? Let me just say one more thing for the actual programming test, which I'll repeat the point again, maybe a little bit later. I think when you're working on a specific lab, usually you're given about 2 weeks. So I think that this development here is very nice, just one test at a time. However, in the actual programming test, let's say, for example, if you're given 1 hour, like a mock-up test, sometimes you may not be able to finish all the test cases until the end, right? Until the time has run out. So what you may want to set yourself, maybe something I'll remind you as well during the test, is to say maybe about 15 minutes before the actual deadline for submission for the test, you may just want to uncomment all the test cases that are remaining. Maybe you're not able to finish them all, but at least you should declare all the necessary method to fix the compilation error. Even though you still get a red bar at the end, but at least you wouldn't get any penalty for your submitted code not compiling. That's something I will also mention in the programming guide, which I'm going to release today. All right. So do really dive into each individual case. If you got any specific questions about how things should be read or should work, let us know. Okay? Thank you.